This is the Bailed Out Podcast,
You have rights. Nobody knows how to deal with the bureaucracy.
where we talk bail to keep you out of jail.
The only thing that saved me each time is I wasn't drunk.
Does that mean you're a really bad driver then?
Hosted by Sean Plotkin, a multi-generational bail agent and 5-star author. And John Roraba, a non-profit founder and attorney who has helped over 20,000 families.
We're not far right, we're not far left, we're very neutral, I hope.
Bail is the balance.
John, what is justice?
That is what the court system is there to establish.
Bailed Out is brought to you in part by searchandmate.com, Turning Leaf, and Angels Bail Bonds. Now, please welcome your hosts, Sean and John.
Hi there today, your Bailed Out podcast with Sean Plotkin and John Rohrbaugh. We have a special guest, Topo Padilla. We're super excited to see him. John, it's great to see you.
Thank you, Sean. It's great to see you again. We've been doing a few of these now. I'm really excited to have our first guest, my dear friend Topo Padilla, that I've worked with for so many years and so articulate on these bail issues.
I'm very amped to have Topo on. He's a little bit about him. He's been involved in the bail industry for 39 years. It's a long time. Served as the president, and he's currently the vice president of the Golden State Bail Agents Association for the past 10 years. He's currently the president of the Professional Bail Agents Association of the United States. He's got a great passion for the bail industry, and he's an even greater passion for our communities, our state, our country, and our families to make it all better. Not to mention, he's also, what I hear, a pretty amazing umpire and auctioneer, which I want to hear more about later. Topo, great to have you on.
Greetings.
Yeah, thank you both for having me here, and for hopefully we can help educate the public and quite frankly the legislators that are taking the time to listen to this.
Yeah, another thing that you all don't know about Topo is he's Sacramento-based, and he's worked with many of our people in Congress from both sides of the aisle to help with bail, help draft laws to help bring justice and protect our social fabric.
Absolutely. I've had the opportunity to work with Topo in Sacramento for many years, and he's so well respected and so well connected, and his service is really been of great value to many people who may never even know it.
Well, since we're getting into it, you've worked together for so long, and it's this is a Bailed Out podcast. So we're trying to find unique stuff that people don't know to educate and inform the consumer. What's some of the grittiest or funnest stories that you have with Topo?
Oh goodness! As you know, I usually stay above the grit. I get on my desk with bail agents, but we've had a few. The time that we got Schwarzenegger to veto a bill that would have been really difficult that would have made it worse for everyone. That was probably our biggest accomplishment that we had together. But we've certainly worked together on a lot of fugitives to help bring them back from all over the world.
Well, that's kind of an exciting thing. Topo, how was it working with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Well, the administration, one thing you don't get to do too much is work directly with him, but working with his staff was wonderful because it was a really good group of people, some who I've gone on to be friends with. And, people who are willing to be educated and hear about a subject matter such as this. And the reason that the bill got vetoed was because his people were willing to listen. And quite frankly, the governor at the time was willing to listen.
And one of the things that Topo and I did that I think we're really proud of is we really changed the focus on bail that it was when we started from can you pay the penalty if the defendant fails to appear to getting new laws passed that give bail agents more opportunities to cure that default of the defendant failing to appear by finding the defendant and bringing him back to court. And that change of bail from being just a question of whether or not the family could pay the penalty to the question of whether or not they can help bring him back. I think that's much better for the community because we get the opportunity for justice when people appear in court.
So, audience, commonly what happens is you bail somebody out, and typically you want to have skin in the game to make sure that they make their appearances in court. If they don't go to court, and if it goes after a period of time, usually 6 months, it can be extended from there. There is it's considered a forfeiture, and a forfeiture is that ultimately the bail agency needs to pay the amount of the forfeiture, and then ultimately comes to the indemnitor, which is typically a loved one, a family member, or someone else. Could be a landlord or a boss or someone that's willing to help make sure that you're going to make your appearances in court. If they don't make those appearances in court, you could be stuck holding that. So what John and Topo had worked on in Sacramento is finding ways to be able to make that pain that's on the families or the indemnitors prolong it, or to help alleviate it with additional stuff. Do you want to elaborate, Topo, on what that stuff is and how what you've done in the past has helped benefit the common indemnitor or working loved one?
Yeah, to break that down, like as was said, when somebody misses court, we have 6 months to return them to court. The objective is to get people to court and have justice be served for whether it's for the person arrested and charged or it's the victim of the crime or the community. And the courts nor the government wants to be enriched by bail. That's not the objective of it. Sean, you just said it moments ago. It's to have skin in the game, and if there was no money at risk or there was nothing at risk, then quite frankly, who really would take the time or objective to go look for somebody and return them? And we'll get into that later when we talk about pretrial release and having skin in the game. But in this instance, you talked about, the bail bonds and paying the courts and then getting the money from the family member or the indemnitor. Quite frankly, that very seldom happens. And that got used against us. That exact term got used. Quite frankly, the bail bondsmen don't pay the courts very much money. And I'm proud to say you're right. You're right to those legislators who said that. That's because we do our job and we return people to court with a great
Absolutely.
percentage of success.
Absolutely. And surety bonds are not like insurance where they're written with the expectation of having a loss, like from things that happen randomly, floods or other things. It's written so that the person has security to be able to post with the court and to be able to get out. And it's more like a co-signing event. So saying the bail agents failed because they didn't pay enough judgments is like saying that a bank has failed because it doesn't have enough loans defaulted, right? I mean, it's the job of the bail agents to make sure that there is as few breaches as possible, and there should be none, because that means that everybody has appeared in court or we've gotten them back.
I mean, if you think back to somebody like Warren Buffett, who's made billions of billions in insurance, and he's done it by he's invested something called the float, and the float is the money that's held to mitigate against losses if there's claims. Well, currently with bail, I mean, having an indemnitor or having a bail agent is in essence a float that's guaranteeing that happens. We're no different than a car insurance or or life insurance or a health insurance that's there to be able to help people to be able to get where they need to be or get out of jail with that. However, it's interesting when you had used the term pretrial release. I don't even think that these risk assessment tools, which I like to call RATs, are even pretrial release. I think it has a positive connotation. I think right now pretrial release, we have that with the current bail schedule. I mean, that's a way to expedite getting people out and being able to have jailers look at stuff and go, hey, you know what, this person falls into this. So I don't know if I would call the current risk assessment tools that are being used pretrial release, but that's my own problem. So Topo, how long you been in this? You said 39, or I said 39 years, and you want to talk a little bit about your family and some of your staff. I'll talk about some of mine and some of my family, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. My father got in the business in 1979, who was preceded by his brother, Leonard Padilla, who's very, very well known in the industry. We got in the business in the mid 70s.
The black hat.
And my dad was in the car business. And in 1979, gas got a little expensive. So he dove into the bail bond business. And the one thing my mom and dad, Greg is my dad and Glenn is my mom, the one thing that they had in their toolbox that didn't need to be taught was care and compassion. They cared and care and compassion for people in the car business. They used to sell cars to people who couldn't afford a car. But they did it so they would have a car. And they did that. And then when it carried over to the bail industry, in this industry, for the most part, bail bonds, kind of all charge the same. Everybody has their different filed rates. But the only thing that's going to separate us in this industry is customer service, integrity, and having dignity and respect for those people that we are working with to help get their loved one out of jail. And for that matter, the one that we do get out of jail.
One of the things I like to explain to people is the bail agents are generally fully liable agents. So they have to personally stand to pay that penalty that's set for the court, as well as the indemnitors, and that allows accurate decision making on whether or not that person should get in or out of jail, because it aligns the interest. It's the avoidance of the penalty that actually keeps the defendants going to court. So that bail is punitive is part of the nature, because there's a real violation if a defendant chooses to avoid court. That's a violation to the people, and so having a penalty that is kind of comparable to that, so that the penalty of bail, the amount of the penalty of bail has to be sufficient to be able to incentivize people to go to court rather than to flee, and that's the self-interest that everybody has, that's set up with the system, that makes it function so much more effectively than the government pretrial, which is run by pre-made decisions, is what I like to call the rats.
I misspoke earlier. I said that we are similar to car insurance or homeowners insurance, but you are 100% right. And I thank you for, I love being around these smart people, because they always make me reflect and calibrate to be a better understanding. A bail agent is better than a car insurance or a home insurance person, because we have our own skin in the game. We have our decades of making the right sound financial decisions. We have our build-up funds with our surety companies. A build-up fund is typically a percentage of the revenue from the premium that's set aside to make sure to indemnify or guarantee the surety company from any losses from that. And with that, with our personal skin in the game, I mean, your uncle, your dad has been in this. Your mom. I mean, my mom's been licensed since I was born. I mean, I was born in '77. And she was licensed in '77, helping my dad translate. My stepmother, Bonnie, she owns Bonnie Plot, or Bonnie, what was Bonnie Plotkin Bail Bonds? Now it's Blue Moon Bail Bonds and Huntington Beach Bail Bonds. She's been in it since '84. My brother and sister, Christy and Josh, are in it. My second cousin, Billy, is in it. He's been in it since '96. So this is not just, we're a broker and we go and we do these premiums that are renewals. We are family businesses that are there, that have been working time and time again to be helping people to get out. And we've been putting our good word and our history on the line to be making sure that they get out. And with your point about the RAT tools, the risk assessment tools, it's just interesting that there is no skin in the game. If you can look at an algorithm or a model that's somebody that we don't know who it is, we don't know who's making these guide frames on getting them out. I mean, we've talked about the Arnold tool in previous podcasts. There's other algorithms out there or models that are used to try and simplify or expedite the process, or minimize the time in jail, to minimize the amount of cost on the criminal justice system. It's just amazing to wonder, like, it's such an opaque framework that what inputs are being put in there, and we have our own idea of it. And Topo, I mean, if you want to go into a little bit of detail about what you think are the inputs for these risk assessment tools, these RATs that are being used to be able to get people out, and then I'd love to touch base with you. But let's let Topo speak. I've spoken enough.
Exactly, because I think these tools are still being used, even though under Prop 25, arguably, the people voted to not use them, but they're still being used by the courts.
Well, why don't you explain a little bit about what Prop 25 is, and then let's jump into Topo, because I'm sure he's got a wealth of freaking experience on this.
Well,
let's go to Topo.
Back to bus up a little bit, when we talk about this, and I really want to talk like we're talking to the everyday person who doesn't even know what a bail bond is, and to understand that when we say risk assessment, RAT is what the term they used, which is an acronym, is that as a bail bondsman, when we underwrite a bond, just like if somebody's get car insurance or house insurance, what year's your car, how far do you drive to and from work, if you had any accidents, what's your your driving record like, and then they set your premium based on that. Where we, as in the bail industry, our premiums are filed by our insurance companies with the Department of Insurance, and each one sets a different rate. The fact of the matter is, it is my job and my duty as a bail bondsman to ask the indemnitor or the person that's calling in for the loved one some questions, some very viable questions. 10 to 15, and I can tell you, I can pretty much underwrite a bail bond. Or if the defendant himself calls in, himself or herself calls in, to get this thing, where do you live? Where do you work? How long have you been in town? Where's your family? Based on that, then I can underwrite the bond, get an indemnitor. If it's a $50,000 bond, this indemnitor might not have the wherewithal to pay $50,000. But what they do have is the respect and the bond. And I use that bond not to be fun, cute, the bond with the defendant. And then I build a bond with either the defendant or I build a bond with a family member that's calling me by showing them, who I am and what I'm willing to do. I'm willing to put up a $50,000 bond to the court, guaranteeing this person's appearance in court. And very quickly and very rapidly, you develop a relationship with these people that you're helping. And thus, getting back to like Prop 25 and what you guys talked about there, I mean, that is going way far forward in the conversation. But the fact of the matter is, while politically some legislators wanted to get rid of the bail industry because it was an agenda that was really and truly set up by the SEIU. And the reason I know that is because I said, what is your guys' malfunction with the bail industry? And they said, well, one of the groups did a vote, and quite frankly, one of their top priorities was to eliminate the bail industry because it affected a lot of their members. And I said, well, what? Okay, but why? Why does it affect their members? I mean, we're not running around making people bail out of jail to walk down the street or go to a grocery store. And they said, obviously the number of members they had, a number of people had to use the bail industry, and they just didn't feel right that they had to pay to get out of jail. That's a whole nother subject. But the fact of the matter is, we educated the public with Proposition 25. And in fact, the voters, by over 2 million votes, said, no, we want to leave the bail industry in place in California.
I know it's pretty obvious, but can you explain a little bit about Prop 25?
Yes, Proposition 25 was in reference to SB 10. There's a bill that Senator Bob Hertzberg and Rob Bonta, who's now the Attorney General of California, they set out. The two gentlemen were the cheerleaders and spearheads for SB 10, which would have eliminated the bail industry. It would have altogether wiped out surety bail bonds, unlike myself. And that bill went through the legislature, very narrowly passed. SB 10 did, very narrowly passed, but it did pass. And of course, it got signed by the governor because he was in on the whole agenda to eliminate the bail industry.
That was Governor Brown, actually. Yeah, Governor
Brown, yes. Yeah. And it's an agenda, and I say an agenda, it's truly an agenda, because they use terms like cash bail and money bail. They go to these think tanks and they say, what are words that are ugly, that'll scare people, that'll get people to go on our side? And quite frankly, they use those terms, money bail or cash bail. Well, that's like saying money car insurance or money life insurance or money health insurance, because there's a premium involved. You don't use those words, but we beat them because we've educated these civic groups that were on the other side of the aisle from us. And I'm talking about the NAACP, Black Lives Matter, and the ACLU. They were completely on the other side of the fence on this. But luckily enough, they had good, smart people in their groups that stopped, listened, absorbed what we said, and said, you know what? If they get rid of the bail industry and this RAT, which is this risk assessment tool.
Hey, should we take the higher ground and call it a pretrial risk assessment tool, and it's a PRAT? That way we don't say cash money or bounty hunter. Let's use PRAT. Let's take the higher ground. We don't have to come up with some negative term that's with it. Not unlike bounty hunter. I mean, if you want to talk a little bit about how they try and have this salacious imagery of someone that's out there trying to chase a bounty, and I think of like Boba Fett or the Wild West. Yeah,
exactly.
Like instead of fugitive recovery agent. I mean, would you like to talk about that a bit?
Yeah. I want to go there, but getting back to this thing, they finally listened to us and said, my gosh, if this risk assessment tool says this person doesn't qualify to be released, they're staying in jail. It's like you're in jail in any other country. I will tell you something that's quite astounding that I'm proud of in this country. There's only 2 countries in the entire world that have surety bail, and that is the United States of America and the Philippines. And rather than being ashamed of that and like, oh, well, maybe we should be like the rest of the world. No, maybe the rest of the world should be like us, because you go to jail in Mexico or in some South American country, your butt's going to stay in jail until a judge decides to let you out of jail. And quite often, more often than not, you're staying in jail. And right. So that's a situation where we should be proud of what we have in this United States of America. You look at places like Oregon and Wisconsin and Illinois where they don't have surety bondsmen, where you pay the court and you enrich in the court.
Right.
The courts don't have any skin in the game. They don't care of any care or concerns if you actually do make it to court.
Yeah, and further to that point with the pretrial release tools, I had a thought, but I just brain farted. You take over.
Yeah, absolutely. Fundamentally, you've got to have for the people's benefit some incentive for someone to go to court, right? And you could do that by just holding them in jail so that you know where they are 100%, right? Or you could either add conditions to the release, or you can have them provide security. And the advantage of using security is that you're not penalized unless you fail to appear. When you have conditions like pretrial conditions, waiving your constitutional rights during the pretrial, wearing a GPS, having to stay in your house, a whole bunch of conditions that courts impose.
Well,
to
they're
try and
also
minimize their
asking
risk.
questions which they shouldn't, right?
I understand, but they're issuing conditions before a failure to appear.
Yeah.
Right? Before you've actually done something wrong, whereas bail is about the security necessary for the penalty for those who fail to appear. And the incentive by using commercial bail agents is that they can mitigate that loss by catching the defendant and bringing him back, as opposed to just paying the penalty, because the state always benefits more by having the defendant in court.
And if I can interject something there, John, you said something again. I know we're talking way about a 30,000 foot altitude for a lot of people, but the fact of the matter is, bail is not meant to be punitive.
Right.
It is not meant to be a tool of punishment.
For the defendants who fail to appear, it is a forfeiture that is imposed. And so there are elements of punitive to that quality, but it's supposed to be complied with. I mean, if someone fails to appear and they run, if you have a traffic ticket, they just convert the bail into the fine. And some states do that with misdemeanors where, it could just be the fine as well. So there is, I disagree. I agree there's not meant to be punishment, but without that security that's going to be taken, the people have nothing. And it's the avoidance of that punishment by appearing in court, which is your duty as a citizen, as a person, to be able to do so, that makes it so that you don't have to pay the security for that. But the point I wanted to make is, if you're using the conditions and the rats and the algorithms, all of those are used to decide what restrictions someone should be put on someone before they're convicted. Whereas bail, the punitive forfeiture parts of it only come with a failure to appear, and you have a time to cure. So it's a very different incentive system.
So Topo, let's hear your perspective. This will be more fun. And audience, I hope that you're listening, because these are, I would say, two subject matter experts in the field that are both from bail perspectives, bail law and a bail. But we're trying to educate you, and we're trying to be neutral. We're not arguing rah pro bail. I mean, if we fall upon something that helps us to be able to glean an insight, to be able to make justice more fair, and that's our attempt. We're not far right. We're not far left. We're very neutral, I hope.
Bail is the balance.
And Topo, I'd love to hear your argument about why you believe that it isn't what John thinks.
Well, I got to tell you, Lady Justice is one of the just the greatest symbols of this country. And she's not right or she's not left. She is about justice and equality. And yes, we are. I mean, you think about the bail industry. People look at us like, people look at me all the time. They go, "Gosh, how do you bail those people out of jail?" I go, "Why wouldn't I bail them out of jail? They're citizens. They're human beings just like us. I'm not a judge. I'm not a jury. I'm going to get them out. I'm going to let them exercise their constitutional right to bail. I'm going to get them out. I'm going to hopefully make sure they go to court. And so if they are guilty, the fact of the matter is, I hope and pray to the good Lord that the criminal justice system will put them in a position to reform whatever they did wrong to where they won't do it again." And I got to be honest with you, if you look at the makeup of the bail industry, say in California, now there's only about 2,000 bail agents. There used to be more than 4,000. There are more minorities in this industry. Mm-hmm. And at one time, and I don't know the number, so I'm not going to say swear to here, there were more women licensed bail agents than there were men. And the fact of the matter is, for the women, it comes down to compassion. Women are a lot more compassionate than men.
You should meet some of my women in my bed. That's a subjective statement.
Sean, just I have Sandra Marquardt has worked for us for over 30 years.
Sandra's
She's been
wonderful. Yeah.
and while at the same time she has compassion, she does have a heavy stick.
Yeah.
My mom could be one hell of a ball buster. She's been doing it since '78. So.
And then you go then digressing back to the minorities. And you look at the minority community that is involved in this industry. I'm of Hispanic descent. My father's 100% Mexican. My grandparents were born in Mexico. I'm about helping. I don't care what race you are.
Right.
And I get so sick and tired of race, because again, the think tank said, hey, let's use race to help us win this fight. The fact of the matter is, I don't care what race you are. You go to jail. I'm going to do whatever I can do to do my job and getting you out of court. At the same time, I'm over on the other side. I love my community. I want a safe community. I want to be able to walk around the
Right.
streets. I want my wife and my kids and everybody else to be able to do it. So we have to have public safety. We have to have accountability.
Right.
And if you look at the communities that have gotten rid of bail and the rapid decline in
Yes.
public safety that has taken place, this isn't an attack on these two DAs, the one in LA and one in San Francisco. This is an attack on the plan that they set out to do upon their communities and the failures. And really and truly, if you watch the news today, bail is a topic that comes up all the time because it's a hinge pin of criminal justice.
It is, and I find it being mischaracterized by both sides as well, and in some of the context, because bail really is the best way to be able to have an incentive to be able to go to court, and yet have the people who are being prosecuted have the fewest penalties and the most freedom to be able to pursue their lives while they're being criminally prosecuted. Having a criminal prosecution over your head makes it very difficult to function, but it's much easier to function when you're at home and with your family than it is being locked up in a jail cell.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I don't disagree. You look at something called an opportunity cost, which is if you're here, you can't be somewhere else. And if you're not able to take your kid to school or be able to help your wife through
Right.
some of the problems, that social cohesion is lost. Something that you had talked about, or Topo, with skin in the game, and you saying it's I forget what the term was, but some punitive. I almost think that in some ways, punitive isn't just a financial pain. We've had a number of bonds, and I'd like to dive into that with you a little bit, Topo, just after this, is where we've had a mom say, I want to get my son out, and we bailed out 7 or 8 times, and we're like, no, stop. Or we've had like I mentioned before, where we've had rosary beads for collateral, and had another family do tamales, where it's not really a financial skin in the game, but it's a family support social fabric. And when you have something like pretrial risk assessment tools that allow people out, you're not really a part of that social fabric. It's the individual that's being processed, sometimes automatically through a database with certain inputs. And I was trying to figure out more so about, like, because we always talk about, oh, the Arnold tool is bad because of this, or risk assessment tools are bad because of that. But I wanted to even go deeper into why, what are some inputs that can be construed bad. I wanted to explain a little bit. And a common question that is asked in the risk assessment tools is, have you been arrested before? Okay, well, why would that be bad? Well, if somebody's in a lower income neighborhood and the police have to make a decision on whether they're going to wait for a crime to be committed, or they have to decide to take actions to prevent a crime, it's been found that in poor neighborhoods, more than 90% of the time, younger people are pulled over more often. 9 out of 10 people in poorer neighborhoods are pulled over. They might have a joint. I know I've smoked enough joints in my day, or they might have a drink. And let's say they're 16 or they're 17, and now they're shooken down. And then the officers they found sometimes say, all right, go on your way. You're just don't do it again. Or they be put into custody. So, all right, so now that input in the Arnold tool or a risk assessment tool is, have you been arrested? Yes. Okay. So that's one potential strike against you with this risk assessment tool. Another one is, have you been arrested with any family? Have any of your family members been arrested? Well, that violates your civil rights. You're not supposed to answer that question. And they don't even tell you why they're asking you these questions, because they don't want you as a person that's incarcerated to be able to game the system to figure out how to get this pretrial release. Has your mom been incarcerated? Has your dad been incarcerated? Have you been arrested with friends before? And then they also want to know potentially sometimes on some of these risk assessment tools, your zip code. Oh, well, these zip codes have this higher probability of getting rearrested again. So now you don't even get a voice. You don't go before a person. You're put into a system based off inputs that they don't even tell us. It's an opaque system that's supposed to be, oh, well, we don't want people to know what is in our proprietary system because then people will game it. But if we don't even know what's in it, we don't know if it's racist or not. Some of the inputs for where I'm getting this information is from all over the web, but one book that I really liked reading is called Weapons of Math Destruction. It's
MATH.
Math Destruction.
Yes.
It's a really smart gal. She has a website called mathbabe.com. I don't know if it's current, but when she wrote the book, she had talked about it. She had been a data scientist, a data analyst. And she talks about in her book about how she went to work for D.E. Jacobs, some really wealthy investment firm, that during the financial collapse in 2008, 2009, she was helping to run the science algorithms of big data that are used on inputs that were flawed, were a greater chance for fraud. And we look at our financial crisis today that happened in 2008, 2009 when we had
Right.
the big one, Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers go down in the derivatives trading. And she goes on to expound further about the school system, how these schools in Baltimore had wanted to improve their education for their students. And so they gave a big data science way to test teachers. And the ones that were in the lowest 5% were fired. And it found out after the fact that these inputs that were put in to figure out which teachers to keep, some of them had increased their student scores 30 to 50% the year before. And they were able to connect better with the students. They were able to help guide them. They were able to give them confidence. And it's just because this big data input where they're not even having any accountability of what those inputs are and why these people are taken out. And the opaque method of it, like with, I know I'm rambling and I apologize and I hope that it's helpful with the consumer, but if you're going to be putting your life on the line for some risk assessment tool where you don't know who's making those decisions, what questions they're asking, and there's no metrics being used or taken to help improve it, like they're not improving the system at all. Like Bill Gates, I was telling, if you guys say shut up, I'll shut up. But I'm rambling. Is this useful? Is this fun? Is this informative or no?
It is, but I have a response I want to make with that, right?
Okay.
So I also want to point out that the nature of the decision that government pretrial is trying to make with those algorithms, with which they use often with judges, it's a very different kind of a decision. It's a question of what conditions should we impose on your freedom during the criminal justice system. And what control?
I don't know that, John. I don't know.
That is what the nature.
That's the whole problem. Is I don't know. I know
you
can speculate on hypotheticals, but we don't know what the purpose is.
Are you going to have? No, it's very clear what the purpose is, because are you going to have to wear an ankle bracelet? Are you going to have? Those are the kinds of decisions they're making. Are you going to be able to leave your house?
But what is the impetus that leads to that?
I understand, but the point of the matter is that the nature of the decision that a bail agent makes is very different. The nature of the decision a bail agent's making is, am I going to stand up for this person? Do I believe I can get them to go to court? The bail agents can make that decision much faster because they're making the decision based on their own experience, and the defendants can get out faster. So there's a different nature of a decision that's being made by bail agents versus government pretrial, that the government is trying to use these risk assessment tools to decide how much control they should have over you during pretrial, rather than with a bail agent, whether the decision is whether or not the bail agent is willing to stand up with the defendant and the defendant's family to make sure they go to court, or else they'll accept a penalty on their behalf. So it's a different
I think
kind of decision.
We agree, but Topo, I'm sure you want to hop in?
Yeah, you said something a few minutes ago. When I'm questioning somebody, quite frankly, have you ever been arrested before? Yeah. Okay. What was it for? Okay. And what happened? Okay. That shows that they've been arrested. They went to court. They took their medicine if they needed to take their medicine. So quite frankly, when and if somebody does say they have been, I mean, it's not something I go, ooh, that's great. Well, that's even going to help my underwriting. But it's shown that they've taken care of business before.
Good point.
So to sum everything what you said, and it was economically, in economics, what you said was was very beneficial. I learned a lot from it. But the fact of the matter is, we're talking about bail. The
Right.
reality is getting people that are arrested out of jail with the objective of making sure they go to court.
Right.
Now, one of the things that these pretrial release programs, they jump up and down. The one in Santa Clara County said we have a 98% success rate. Well, that is a just big fat lie.
Right.
No, they don't.
No.
Do you know that there's some counties in this country that do not count failures to appear? They just don't count them because they don't want those numbers. They say,
Right.
well, we're not going to. That case is actually, and I think it's one of the jurisdictions in Texas. That case is just, if you don't show up for court, it's gone. It's gone because they don't want to have a failure. So back to what I was going to say is, the bail industry, and I've done a study here in Sacramento where I'm based, and I've had a great success with the courts and the sheriff's department giving me these numbers. I said, okay, on any given day, how many bail bonds are active right now in this court? And they give me that number. Then I said, how many of those bail bonds are forfeited? Or how many bail bonds are forfeited?
Right.
And the numbers, 200, 250. Out of all the cases out on bail, thousands and thousands, only 200 or 250 are forfeited, meaning that person's missed court. Then I asked the next number. I called the sheriff's department. I say, how many warrants are in the system today? 40,000. 40,000 warrants, and 250, maybe 300 of those warrants are out on bail. The rest of them are out on somebody signing a piece of paper saying, hey, I'll be back. I promise I'll be back. And quite frankly, if we don't care about justice and we don't care about public safety, then that's the right direction to head. My dad always, if he was sitting right here right now, he'd be sliding a note underneath me. A few years ago, Assemblyman Jim Cooper was testifying on the floor of the Assembly on SB 10, and he got the numbers from Los Angeles County. There was 2.1 million active bench warrants in the system when he did the query. 2.1. The population's 8 million. That means a quarter of the population has warrants. Obviously, that's a statistical number. But the fact of the matter is, that's obnoxious. That is gross. That is a society saying you were charged with this, you were given a ticket or a citation, or you signed a piece of paper, or you bailed out of jail, and you didn't go to court. Nobody is out there looking for those people, trying to clear them up. So now those people are walking around every day, looking over the shoulder. Every time they see a cop car, maybe hear a fire engine, they go, oh gosh, they come in for me. I don't want people to live like that. Just like when I see homeless people, I don't want them to live like that. I don't want people to live with warrants. That's why quite often when we do our marketing, say, hey, if you think you have a warrant, call us. We'll help you clear it up. Even if I don't make money off it, God is my witness. If I can help somebody clear a warrant, get them back on track, that's what we want to do.
Absolutely.
And that helps in a softer way to elaborate where I was going with it. One, the opaque nature of the risk assessment tools, and two, the accountability for what has been done. Well, what state was it on the East Coast that's been doing pretrial release for decades now?
The Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia. Let me just jump into that. I got my numbers.
Exactly. Yes.
I don't even need my numbers
know.
written down.
I love it.
Although they have changed, I got these numbers back when SB 10 was going through the legislature, and the population of the District of Columbia is about 650,000 people. Okay, 650,000. That's it. It's not that big of an area. The budget for their pretrial release system at that time, with that population, the budget to run their pretrial release system was $65 million. So you might think, well, that's not very much. So what? Well, okay, so if you want to make that same program here in the great state of California with a population of 40 million people, all you have to do is do an algebra formula, and you're going to come up with $3.1 billion to run a government-funded, strike that, taxpayer-funded program that is not going to work. Now, I'm not saying that because I want to save my industry and I want to have a job. I'm saying it because I don't believe everybody should have to bail out of jail. I do not believe that. I believe you earn your position in line to say, you're free, you're free, you're free. You've got to bail out of jail. And that can be earned through the seriousness of your crime, the public safety aspect of it, your failure to appear rate, and stuff like that. So those are things you earn the need to call a bail bondsman. But quite frankly, I don't think everybody does. And I don't think California needs to be shouldered with a $3.1 billion project that will not work.
Well,
And
you're
that's evident by what
and
happened in San Jose.
just a little bit of context. The entire budget for California's judicial system, is at least the last time I checked, was about $4 billion to run all of the courthouses and everything. So I mean, it is grossly expensive to have very poor results, and most of the costs of the government pretrial system is in the additional crimes that are being committed because nobody is going out to catch the defendants and then bring them back. And we've known for a long time that fugitives, have a far higher rate of committing crimes than people who are actually active and participating in the criminal justice system.
Yeah, it doesn't, guys. I got to be honest with you. I sometimes when I listen to these people argue the other side, I'm going, number one, if you really stopped and look in the mirror, what you're saying, it's completely obnoxious. It's kind of like what's going on today's day and age with right now with the subject that I won't even get into. But when some people say something, it's so obnoxious. So when these people from Santa Clara County said they have a 98% success rate on people they release on, pretrial release programs where they say sign here and you come back, it's just obnoxious. So, do we want a justice system where the wheels of justice keep turning and people are changed? If this government wants to spend money on something, they'll go spend it in the California Department of Corrections and really and truly make it. I'm not putting this off on the prison guards or anybody like that. Really and truly have programs of rehabilitation in our prisons. But then you got to go back to AB 109, where the ignorant thought is, well, let's instead of putting people in prison, let's have them do time in the county jails, and that'll be cheaper and that'll be better.
Hey, explain a little bit. I know you just did, but explain it a little bit more detail. AB 109.
So Assembly Bill 109 was a bill that went through the legislature here, and I remember I walked the halls with Celeste King, my dear friend Celeste King, and our great lobbyist who we just recently lost, Kathy Lynch. The three of us walked the halls of the Capitol. Yes, because AB 109 was going to have an effect on the bail industry, because we knew that if there was what it was going to do is it was called realignment, because we had too many prisons and the prisons were too costly. So rather than learning how to figure out how to reduce costs, they said, well, why don't we just take inmates that are going to serve less than a year or for these certain levels of crimes, we'll just have them do their time in their county jails. Well, 99.9% of county jails are not set up to be long-term places for people to spend time. They're just not set up for it. So you have no rehabilitation programs. You have not the facilities for it. I mean, I'm right here in Sacramento. We don't have the facilities for that. But we're going to have all this money. We're going to give you this money. Instead of putting people in prison, we're going to put them in your county jail. We're going to shift the money to you. They didn't shift no money. These programs haven't existed. So the fact of the matter is, people aren't rehabilitated. And we do have what John referred to a minute ago, recidivism. And that's when somebody gets in trouble and gets in trouble again for the same thing or something different. And just before the show went on, I told you guys I just received a call from a law enforcement officer who said, look, this is going to be the third time we've arrested this young lady in the last 30 days for fentanyl. And he said, Topo, the fact of the matter is, it's only a matter of time before the wrong person gets the wrong pill and dies. And we're all going to have to shoulder this. So I said, well, you do your job. You get a hold placed on her. I'll do my job. And it's time that we stop bailing her out of jail. It's time that her family starts saying, we're not going to let her keep doing her crimes, because her prison sentence is just increasing. So we as a community, being the cop, myself, and her family, are going to work to getting this lady the help she needs to where she'll stop her criminal activity.
This goes much into the social fabric that we have talked about, where it's the family and the loved ones, and bless Kathy Hall with her or her push advocating for bail, and some of, I don't know if we want to dive into that on how pretrial release ultimately came back, or should we not go there?
Yeah, I mean, it's Sean. Yeah, if it's okay, I'll go there, because it's.
Are you comfortable going there? Or
I am. I had
respectful.
a comment that I wanted to make to the Prop 109, because another problem
AB
that
109.
caused with the AB 109, I apologize. Another problem that caused is the federal government took over California's prisons and many of the jails, and there was something called a federal release, where the federal government was requiring people to be released from pretrial without the judge looking at it, without bail, without even government pretrial, just because California couldn't keep conditions in their jails safe for pretrial defendants. And so a lot of the federal government found that you just had to release a lot of the people, and then they had no restrictions or guidance for court.
And it was an agenda. It has been an agenda since AB 109 started, and it's an agenda today. And you got to ask myself. My wife asks me all the time. She goes, "Who are they trying to appease with all these soft on crime policies?" Because it's just like as parents, if your kid was, you caught him day after day taking a cookie out of the cookie jar or $1 out of your wallet, and you didn't punish them sooner or later it's going to be $10, $100, and no telling else what, and they're going to maybe go out and commit a crime out somewhere else. It all starts with accountability. And we as
Right.
parents, and the same thing goes here. If you just want to have those soft on crime policies, then you really don't want people to change their ways. I do, not because I'm some right-wing terror, put everybody in prison. No, I want to hold people
Well, you have an
accountable.
American flag, so maybe people. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, and that's
I'm
a
proud to be
tragedy.
an
And
American. Yeah.
another agenda that that they're trying to build for the hatred for a certain party, that this certain party just wants everybody in prison. And Sean, I want to go back.
I shouldn't have gone there. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's
No,
getting
but
us away
I
from
want to go
neutral.
back to something you said
Yeah.
earlier about the minority communities and law enforcement. And quite frankly, I've walked the minority communities in this town, and I'm going to tell you, there's nobody more powerful. And John will agree with me. There's nobody more powerful than that mother sitting in her chair
Right.
on her porch
Absolutely.
that
Right.
wants her community to be safe, who doesn't want her children, who
Right.
doesn't want grandchildren out there
Right.
running the streets, doing the wrong thing, running the
Right.
streets, basketball, catching a football. Yes, they do.
Right.
But they are the ones. So when these people use the minority communities and the police stopping, the kids in the street and all this and that, well, let me tell you what, maybe they're doing that. Maybe they're out there to try and prevent the big thing from happening and stymie it in the beginning. And, law enforcement, when they used to have proactive policing here, there's a police officer that I met when I was a kid. His name is Sacramento Police Department, Jim Lister. And that man could walk into the most dangerous parts of North Sacramento, and he was beloved. He was beloved by the good, honest people that never seen handcuffs, and he was loved by the people who had seen handcuffs. He was respected. That man changed and saved so many lives. And there's not too many Jim Listers, not because today's cops aren't Jimmy Listers. It's because they don't want them to be. They don't want them out there.
Right.
They actually don't want them out there being in those
Right.
minority communities. They're like, no, we don't want to see cops out here in these streets because then you're pulling our people over. That's just such a moronic approach to policing to not have.
Well, we have very few minutes left. One point I'd like for us to, John, what is justice?
Yeah, really, that is a good question, and that is what the court system is there to establish, so that we have a process to achieve justice.
You ask an attorney about justice, he goes to the court. So let's keep going.
Absolutely, yeah, and because that's your opportunity for justice. Justice is a difficult concept, but it absolutely involves a process where both the victims and the alleged perpetrators and the people have an opportunity to have a process to be able to determine what happened and what should be done about it. That's what justice is, and it is very difficult to have justice if you don't have a defendant in the courthouse. So bail is essential for justice because it keeps people going to court, but also it only punishes them after the process or after a breach instead of before the breach. So I think that justice is, especially American justice, the way we have our constitutional rights set up, is very procedural. In American law, if you've had the right,
we got 30 seconds more
process,
for it. I know you don't want to be rushed.
understand.
You're going to go over. But
Thank you. We'll get it.
Yeah.
You asked me what justice is.
I know. I'm sorry. I always mess you up when I cut you off. But do you have any more? Or did I just? I'm
That
sorry.
was good. That was good. Bail is essential for justice because it keeps people going to court.
Topo, what is justice?
I got to tell you, one of the boards I proudly serve on, and I've been on their advisory board for many years. Now I'm on their executive board. That's the Crime Victims United of California.
Right.
And Harriet and Mike Salerno started this organization because they didn't feel victims of crime had any advocates at the Capitol, sometimes advocates at the court with them.
Right.
And today, Nina Salerno is the president of that organization. I work shoulder to shoulder with them. Why? Why does a bail bondsman do that? Because I don't wear my bail bondsman hat when I go work with them. I wear my Topo Padilla, I'm a citizen of this community hat. So you ask,
Right.
what is justice? And there's two things I have for that. And it is where the victim feels, or the victim's family feels, there's been a remedy, and
Mhm.
they feel like we've had a remedy to what happened to us. And then the other one is change in one's ways, a change
Right.
in one's ways, so that if and when somebody is sentenced to time or work project or whatever it is they're sentenced to, that we hopefully are going to see a change in what got them there in the first place. And those are my two, Lady Justice, bags of sand in her hands. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, no, I agree with you both, and I believe that liberty and justice go hand in hand. And I'd like to talk a little bit about Anne Marie Schubert. She's, I would say, for justice.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm sure you've both worked with her many a time, helping to helping to deal with the laws and making a more just society. Would either of you like to talk about Anne Marie?
Well, briefly, part of justice is experience, and she's really had the experience of working with people over many years to try to achieve that often elusive thing of justice, and so her experience with that and her intent to be able to achieve justice, I think, is shown through that experience that she's had.
Topo?
Yeah, I've got the great fortune of being based here in Sacramento County, of working around Anne Marie when she was a district attorney, a deputy district attorney, and then since she's become our district attorney. And one thing that Anne Marie has done, and not that her predecessor Jan Scully didn't do, but Anne Marie has really, really got out there and been proactive in preventing crimes, especially when it comes to like human trafficking and stuff like that. And Anne Marie was very pivotal in bringing the Golden State Killer to justice.
Mm.
And I got to tell you,
Who's the Golden State Killer? Just real quick.
he was the East Area rapist. He was a an individual who
An
terrorized.
East area that's in NorCal? Where is that, like
It
Redwood
was
City?
it was the East Area. It was actually we felt as though he started here in Sacramento in the East Area, and he was a guy who raped and murdered and just terrorized Sacramento for many, many years when I was a young boy. In fact, gosh, growing up, you could have your windows open, your doors unlocked, and it got it to where your windows were closed, your doors were locked. Some people put aluminum foil down their hallways at night so that they could hear if he was walking down the hallways.
Was that Richard Ramirez, or that he was
No.
he was more
No.
down here? He was
No.
he was our
just-
SoCal.
No.
Right.
He's the one they caught with the DNA evidence, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it was. But anyway, so back to Anne Marie. She, when she took the job as our DA, certainly I knew her. We grew up in the same circle of friends. I watched her and I watched her work. I watched the changes she made. I watched the proactive things she did. I watched what her deputies did, and her deputies, while they had a carrot and they had a stick.
Right.
Quite often, a lot of times they had a stick, because she said, if you guys are not going to learn your way and you're going to keep recidivism is going to keep going, well, we're going to hit you with a stick. And quite a few of the defense attorneys are like, damn, she's pretty.
And recidivism, again, is when somebody is released from jail and then commits another crime, is put back in jail, usually prior to their trial date.
No,
Right?
it could be that they've been sentenced, they've gone and done their prison time, and then they did it again.
Well, I'm sorry, I misspoke. With
okay.
the pretrial risk assessment tools, it's happening more and more often before they have their trial date.
Yeah, let me back to Anne Marie, and I for years I've known her for over a decade, and I had no idea what political party she was, and it didn't matter. She was our district attorney. She was not a Republican or a Democrat. So then when she comes out and says, I'm going to run for attorney general, I said, thank the good Lord, finally, and somebody who I don't know what political party she's with, because quite frankly, I don't think the attorney general or the insurance commissioner, for that matter, should be a partisan race. I think you should be a citizen of this county. This is the top cop. Do you care if your top cop is a Republican or a Democrat? I don't. I want them to be an enforcer of the laws that this legislature has put on the books and this governor has signed, an enforcer of those laws, but to be an arbiter of those laws and to carry out the ones that she feels we should. and not use that office as a political tool. And Anne Marie is an independent. She's got a tough hill to climb because she's going up against Rob Bonta, who was an assemblyman who is has an agenda. And his agenda right now is pretty quiet. He's being pretty good because it's in the political race. But if he wins, California better be ready for a Chesia Bodine, George Gascon kind of guy being the Attorney General of California. And I say
who's Jesse Bodine and
Chesia
Gascon?
Bodine. He is the attorney, the district attorney of San Francisco, who is far from a district attorney. He's more of a public defender. And then George Gascon, obviously, is the district attorney of Los Angeles, who's both of them are facing a recall for no other reason other than the fact that they've destroyed their two cities that they are the top cop in.
Wasn't Bodine? I think there was an article how he was funded by some billionaire to. Is that the same fellow?
Yes. Yeah. There's all these folks that are running for district attorney that you've never heard of before. You're going, who is that are coming in? Oh my gosh, with all these great ideas about social justice and criminal justice reform. Be wary when you hear that. Go, whoa, wait a minute. Who are you? Because there's more counties to name that have been taken over by across this country.
Yeah.
If you have not watched the episodes of the Philadelphia District Attorney, if you have not seen that, I encourage everybody to go on and Google it, where you can watch the Philly DA is what it's called. And it's about the guy who's the district attorney in Philadelphia. And you would almost think it is not real. You'd almost think it's a made up documentary, but it is as real as it can get. And the fact of the matter is, going back to this, guys, these people are making people that maybe one-time criminals, bigger criminals.
Yes. That's a great point.
All right. Well, let's
crimes. So anyway,
I'm with you.
Talking about it. A whole other subject.
I think as we got to talking, I was able to formulate. For me, justice would be being able to live a righteous life and know that I don't have to put the aluminum foil in my home and worry about that, or let my children go out and play and not get picked up at the park, and know that we're able to live our lives. So a key takeaway, I'll start with myself. I want to live a better life. I think I want to vote for Anne Marie Schubert. I want justice. John?
Fundamentally for me, it comes down to the family and those close social networks, and we need to make sure that we get that properly incentivized, because that's where real transformation and change takes place. People are complicated. It takes place within those close relationships that you have, and in order to get justice and to get transformation, we need to support those families, and especially when there is a traumatic event like an arrest of a loved one.
Well, that's why you have Turning Leaf.
It is.
And for me, I'm a lifelong resident of California. I've lived in the same street my entire life.
Wow.
I live just right down the street from my parents and my son. I don't want to leave. I don't want to go to Tennessee. I don't want to go to Texas or Idaho, although I love those places. Right. I don't want to go live there. I want to live right here in the greatest state in this country. And so I'm not giving up. I'm not going to run and tell my friends that have left, God bless you. I hope you're enjoying yourself, but I'm not going to leave. I'm going to fight. And I think we're seeing the pendulum swinging back here. I know that I have got a lot of friends on the other side of the aisle politically, but when it comes to public safety and criminal justice, they're saying, hey, this social experiment isn't working.
Right.
And this attack on law enforcement is not the right attack. Right. They're not the problem. And so for me, we just got to keep fighting this fight and quit screaming at each other, talk to each other. I mean, what's going on right now with the Supreme Court is a destruction of the fabric of this country, not because of the content, but in the way in which it's being handled. I don't mind protests, but by God, when you start going after the men and women we put at the top of our courts, can you imagine if they gave out the addresses of a Superior Court judge in Los Angeles or Santa Clara County or any other county, or that there would be hell to pay?
That goes in line with, these are Supreme Court justices, and now they can't sleep at night. Come on. But all right, thank you so much for listening. Listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen. Remember to follow, rate, and review. This podcast was made possible by Topo with Greg Padilla bail bonds. Also with Solomon at Podcast Place in Long Beach. Check him out. Thank you so much, Quinn. Very thank you much to Devin with Steady Creative, Turning Leaf, John
Thank you.
Rohrbaugh.
Yes.
I'm Angels Bail Bonds and searchandmate.com. If you have any bail questions or if you want to learn more about the bail industry or how to save money with bail, check out my book, Get Bail, Leave Jail, or give us a call at 844-BUY-JAIL, BYEJAIL. That was a fun one. You have
Thank
anything
you.
else
I
to
had
add?
fun.
Yeah.
No, that was a great episode. We look forward to the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.